This is a short tutorial showing Image Pro Premiere version 9.1 and how to set up and use Smart Segmentation. Smart Segmentation is a segmentation method based upon pixel classification, which can be used for either color or monochrome images. This method improves the segmentation of areas or objects based upon their difference from the background and other object classes if you have those set, using an advanced multi-parameter segmentation algorithm. So let's go ahead and start. I'm going to select an image, and I'm going to select Smart Segmentation. Right now, for this tutorial, it's assumed that you have count and size set up properly. If that you're doing object splitting, you have that properly set, what types of measurements you would like to keep track of, and if you're filtering out or using edit range to filter out any objects or areas that you don't want to include, plus the measurement options if you have clean borders or anything like that set. So that's going to be assumed that that's already properly set. Smart segmentation is just taking over the part of how you segment your areas or objects from the background. So let's walk through Smart Segmentation. I'm going to reset everything, and one of the important things is if you've been using Image Pro Premiere for other applications, or if you've already been doing things, I like to reset everything to start fresh. So let's just do that. I'm going to reset a couple of the options here, and I'm also going to reset, let's delete everything. There we go. Now I'm going to reset my class objects here, because what will happen is, just as in Image Pro Premiere in the segmentation, if I name a particular area or class with a name, that will populate in here and then carry over to the data table. So let's walk through Smart Segmentation. It's a nice oriented workflow where the Smart Segmentation in Select and Count allows me to define reference areas or objects. So in this image, I have two. I have my brown and my blue and a background. So I'll go through and do that in a second. This is where I can change colors, change my sampling probes. Train and save allows me to, in essence, save a recipe that I can use later on in a macro or use in batch processing. I can also analyze open images on the desktop by using my set and apply global, or what Smart Segmentation also allows me to do is, based upon image, build a training set that I can go to another image and refine my recipe in my segmentation. Mask and overlay. The primary one here is show, which actually shows me my segmentation layer. And the most important thing here is the recipe options. I've pressed reset, and this will select, out of all these parameters, the red, green, and blue. This is equivalent to what was in Image Pro Plus doing the color picker, where I'm choosing an area, and based upon that mix of red, green, and blue values, that's how I'm basing my segmentation. The power of Smart Segmentation comes in by pressing all. What that will do is, when I define my areas from my background, it will use all of this information, grayscale, all these individual color channels, the various backgrounds, and most importantly, all of the texture information. So this is running a series of filters, again, in the background, where I'm going to use this information to help separate out my objects of interest from the background. So now we can take texture into account, which is very powerful. In 9.1, there's a new feature here called Custom. What this allows us to do is run the equivalent of some other image pre-processing steps that I can create by adding a new channel. So there's a number of inputs that I can use, a whole series of filters. If it's a color image, I can choose individual channels. So I can build almost what is the equivalent of a custom macro. Then if there's a series of processing steps that I need to do to properly find areas or maybe structures where I want to analyze within a structure, analyze, say, nuclei within a structure, I can create that. I'm just going to cancel this. One other little important thing as we go through, as we create our recipe and our segmentation settings, you'll see this populate. In essence, what will happen is, as I define my reference areas for my background, it will do a maximum separation statistically using all these parameters to separate my objects into different classes from the background. And you'll see those values populate down here. So let's get started. I'm going to leave this. I can change the colors. I can choose different sampling probes. Here, I'll just choose a polygon. I can give it a name. I'm going to select the dab. And one of the things you want to do is be very careful that when you segment, or I should say, define your reference areas, you want to be careful not to segment outside of those areas. So now I can add another class. Again, I can use a polygon. You don't have to draw this one area. You can draw more. Typically, you want to start off with one area for each class, and then we can come back and refine this. Now I'm going to find a background, place where there's no tissue. And what this will do is overlay, and that's pretty good. I can refine it a little bit. You can see there was a little open area here that I didn't quite get right just by my segmentation. But what you'll notice is down the recipe summary, it's telling me how many reference objects and how many segmentation classes. In essence, I have 2 and a background. But what's important here is to understand is using all these parameters, you'll see the weighting. And some of these are more important than the others. You can come back and refine this by turning some of these off. You can do the auto weighting, which is taking all these parameters into account, or you could say the top 3. One other thing I should explain, if you're dealing with cells, small objects, maybe inclusions, anything where there's really a size associated with it, we can set this in pixels because these in essence, image processing filters are being run in the background. That you like to set this to your minimum area size, so you don't, in essence, in the background, go removing them. So let's go through and refine this a little bit. Here's a little bit of a background. I think I'm just going to take a straight line. You can also use local zoom. Just clean it up a little bit. Pretty good. Tweak a little bit here. Again, this is where we refine this. And every time when I'm in this refining process, every time I draw another reference area or background, it will update the weighting. So if I'm happy with this, I can do one of 2 things. I can now go in and count, or I can use the count button in Smart Segmentation, and it will do the analysis. And you can see I have all these parameters, all these different areas. In the data table, I'm going to delete that for a second. Go back to my Smart Segmentation. See the overlays are still there, my reference areas. But now I want to save this for further use. So all I need to do is go into my train and save. I can call it, I'm just going to call it dab. And it saves segmentation options. More importantly, if I want to analyze another image, what I can also do is use my set global and apply global. So this is going to set with set global. When I press that, that is going to use these settings that I can apply to other images. Let me go ahead and this image is already counted. I can now go to this image. If I go apply global, I don't have to reload my settings, but it's using those same segmentation values. If I'm happy with this, at this point, I can go in and count. If I'm still a little bit off or want to refine it, where I'm really building a training set, I can always go in, delete that, pull in my Smart Segmentation. And if I want to, I can now come in and go, well, I missed this little bit of an area here, refine it a little bit. Again, it will update it, it'll update the weighting. That's certainly much more accurate. It's updated this weighting. Again, I can resave this recipe if I want to. But the important thing is this allows me, based upon using multiple images, to refine my algorithm in Smart Segmentation, my recipe. This is a very powerful tool, especially when you have an image that's not representative of all the classes or all the range of variation that you can see. All right, let's go and show one more thing here. Again, now I can come back and count. And if I want to count more images, but what's also important is, just as in the count and size tutorial, you can save these settings. If I come into the options and I save under segmentation options, that will not only save how count size is set up and how the data table is set up, it will apply the segmentation that I just created. Most of the times you'll want to do that. Every once in a while, you may want to save this recipe separately so then you can build and refine it and recall that later. Let's go through another example. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to close off these images and show another example that can be used in a slightly different way. Let's close the measurement options. I'm going to go to Smart Segmentation again. As you can see, I've done this a little bit, but let me just clear all this out. It's applying, it automatically applied that. I'm going to reset everything. Reset. So now let's go through and analyze this image. This is a KI67. Again, I can use this for life science. I can use it for industrial. I can use it for physical sciences, monochrome or grayscale. In this particular case, I can now go in. Let's change the color, make it a little bit different so it's very obvious. If I want to, I can zoom up, where I can define, in this case, my nuclei. If I want to, I could try to separate these into different classes where they're a mix of browns and blues. You can see there's some here. Maybe I'll just take those and make those all part of one. If you make a mistake and you draw something, or just to be obvious, I made a big error, you can always come back in, take the selection tool, highlight it, and delete it, either through the delete key on your keyboard or just pressing delete. Again, even after I do my segmentation, I can always come back and delete these reference objects. Let's go in, add a new class. Let's change it to a different color. Again, you have full control over this. I can give this a name if I want to. I'll just call it negative. Again, I can add a few more if I need to. I just want to get a representative population. As you can see, there's a wide variety of staining here. Let's bring this down a little bit. And it's nice to be able to choose the different colors so you don't mix them up. And let's do a background. It's now applying it. And now I can come back and refine that. If one of the things that you can do, and here's a perfect example, if you segment a large area, you really can't see what's underneath. You can do one of two things. You can turn it on and off so you can see what's underneath the segmentation layer, or you can change the transparency. So let's change that to a slightly higher number to make it more transparent. Let's come down to 70. Now what I can see is I can see the structure underneath the segmentation layer. So if I need to refine it a little bit, I can see my backgrounds are a little off. I can use any of these tools here. And let's just take that. Again, that will start off the whole process. That's much better. Tweak it a little bit. Pretty good. So at that point, I can now go in. Again, I can keep refining this or not. The key being selecting the right objects, areas that are appropriate for each class. Again, if I have my value set up here, maybe I'll do an object split, do a watershed. My types are all set. All I need to do is close that. I can press count, and when I count, that will go through and do my analysis. For more information on Smart Segmentation or Image Pro Premier, please contact your local dealer or local sales office. Thank you.